Episode 4. Josh, we're here. How's it going?
I'm good, mate. I'm buzzing about today. Absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, me too. Me too. How's your week been so far?
It's good. I managed to not ingest any disinfectant, so I'm feeling pretty good. I've had a really busy, hectic week, but a really good and laid back weekend, mate. So I'm feeling hyped up this week. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, likewise. So listen, I want to kick things off with a little game that I play with my kids.
Oh yeah.
It's direct at you. Quick fire. No reasons given. I want your intuitive first answer. Okay.
Okay. I'm good. Yeah.
So the game is called Would You Rather. Do you know the game?
Never heard of it. No.
Okay. So Would You Rather. So I'm going to give you two options. I'm going to say Would You Rather, and you've got to pick one. No, like getting out. No saying no. So this is a game that we play at bedtime usually.
Okay.
So ready?
I'm ready, mate. I'm ready. Born ready.
Would you rather live with Boris Johnson or Donald Trump?
Donald Trump.
Really?
Do you want me to answer why? Can I give you why?
No. Okay. Would you rather have no money forever or no food forever?
No money.
Okay. Would you rather lose access to Instagram or YouTube?
Instagram.
Okay. Would you rather pledge allegiance to Oxford United or Liverpool Football Club?
Liverpool Football Club every single day of the week, without question.
Okay, and this one was from one when I played with my kids. Would you rather have your bum on your face or your face on your bum?
My face on my bum.
Okay, man. And there you have an insight into Josh Connolly and his inner workings.
Do you know what? Actually, I found all of them relatively easy, apart from I could probably change the money in the food one, right? Because if I had money, then I could just buy food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know you love your food, so you went straight there.
Oh, straight to food,
You just went food.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, if I'm destitute, as long as I got a big fat belly. Okay, let's go back to Boris Johnson and Trump then.
Why did I pick Trump?
Yeah.
By the way, it's a complete, in my opinion, a lesser of two evils, right? And I wouldn't want to have to pick one.
Lesser of two evils.
But
Trump. Okay.
I think Trump is less slippery. So I think they're both a pair of idiots. But I think...
And if you're living with him, you want him to be less slippery, right?
Yeah, and Trump's more open. Like Trump's more, at least Trump, and I think this is why people like Trump. A lot of people like Trump is because he's just, he's very, I think he is what he is, right? And I think he's less, I think he believes everything he says. Whereas I would say Boris Johnson is a little bit more clever and kind of says what he thinks is right in the moment and stuff like that and hides his true view.
Oh, I don't know, man. Living with Donald Trump for eternity is a nightmare to me.
What, more so than living with Boris Johnson?
Yeah, I think so.
Why?
I think I'd appreciate intellectual conversation, whether he's slippery or would have an argument.
And you're getting that from Boris Johnson, intellectual conversation?
More than Trump. I don't know about you, but, Trump really trumped it this past week with the disinfectant. I mean, that is whole levels of stupid. Anyway.
Actually, what I thought was even better was that his defense for it in the end was, it's just being sarcastic.
Yeah, just,
But actually, while we're there, I'll touch on it. Trump is I think he's a proper version of a narcissist, right? And being a narcissist is slightly different to having narcissistic tendencies. We can all fall into having narcissistic tendencies, but I reckon a true narc has a complete inability to self-reflect. So that's why I think when he says what he says, he's not thinking, I can't say that, I better say this. He genuinely thinks what he's saying is right because he'll never self-reflect. He'll never have the ability to see, well, actually, when I said that, maybe I was a little bit silly, right? And if he'd have come out the next week and just been like, you know what? It's a little bit naive to say what I said. I was kind of just thinking out loud and maybe I shouldn't have said it, right? And I would have maybe had a little bit more respect, but because he can't self-reflect, he won't do that. He'll just think, well, I was just being sarcastic. So that's the difference between a true narcissist and somebody who has narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah. No, I think you're right there. So, so what have you been up to since we last were on the poddy?
I've been prepping really for this week. I've been doing a few more like of the Instagram lives, which have been pretty good. I've had quite a bit of fun doing them. And then this week I'm delivering all week. So I set up like this evening, I'm going to be delivering a seminar for teachers as well, which I'm quite excited about. It's had quite a big uptake, actually bigger than I thought. So that's been good.
Tell us about that, mate.
So I deliver a seminar normally in person to teachers, and it's something that I've been doing for a couple of years, but I do it from the perspective of, you will know this about me, right? I think really, really highly of teachers, right? Because I think that when I go into the schools and I see the work that they do and the battles that they're consistently fighting all of the time, I hold them in high regard. And actually, I don't think they necessarily need teaching how to do things differently. I just think they need to we need to arm them with the perspective of knowing a bit more about why people might present in the way that they do, why young people might present in the way that they do, and then know that the main majority of teachers will know what to do in the moment, armed with the right information. So the seminar that I give is much more about, you know, the deep stuff that I talk about, how and why you might have a problematic young person within your lesson and where that comes from, going beyond the anger and stuff like that. When I was a kid, I had a lot of anger management, and I don't think you can necessarily manage your anger. Anger is a reaction to a feeling, and what I needed was help with that feeling. And so I just think, you know, it'll be about that. It'll be about creating the discussion and not necessarily telling them what they should do, but saying, here's some of the reasonings and my beliefs, and maybe now it might help you to change the way that you work as a teacher. So I'm doing that this evening in between 3 webcasts today. So I've got first one's Europe, UK, Russia. Then this evening is America and Canada. And then tonight, Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia, mate.
Wow, mate. Global citizen.
Yes.
You're traveling the world, even though from the comfort of your office.
From the comfort of my office. Yeah. What about you? Have you had a busy week? What have you been doing with yourself?
It's been busy. Yeah, no, it's been busy. We've got stuff we're doing with clients. And then me and the boys are taking some of the stuff that we do in person training and turning that into digital content. So we're sort of in the middle of that. And then we're working on kind of a longer term product idea that we think is just really needed right now. So that's quite busy, heads in sort of 3 different kind of flows, but and then just trying to, you know, get some sort of systems around all 3 so that we don't end up just kind of spinning too many plates and, you know, and not know what we're doing, and just catching up with people and stuff like that, which is good.
I've done that. I've done a bit. Do you know what? I've done a bit of like reconnecting or connecting with people this week with no proper objective. So not like, what's the result? What's the outcome from this call? Just like, let's connect as human beings and see what sort of path we're both on. And I think we lost the art of doing that. That's one of the positives that I've seen come from this, you know, from this week. And then also mixing about and looking at some of the news. Tell me, Hass, very quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on this, I don't think. You might not even have an opinion on it. What do you think about Richard Branson taking the taxpayers' money to get a bailout for his Virgin boys?
It's a very pointed question.
You can say I don't have an opinion on it.
I do. The opinion I have is that it shouldn't just be Richard Branson, right?
Yeah.
And if you have significant wealth like that, if you have taken advantages of the really loose tax system, and you have amassed wealth, then you should be digging your hands in your pocket. right?
Yeah.
But because of the way that Richard Branson has built his empire, which is a lot of public kind of PR and trading on the underdog story, you know, he's getting singled out, and people are saying, calling for remove his knighthood and stuff. I don't think so. I mean, he's doing what any other corporation is doing. It's just he's the figurehead of a corporation, but all corporations should be treated the same. And if you've got enough reserve, then you should consider doing it. The problem is that it's indiscriminate in a way, and they're taking advantage of that. So I don't think he should be necessarily singularly vilified, but I do think he should be part of a group of CEOs of big corporations who should, where the scrutiny should come at them and say, you need to be putting your hand in your pocket.
Good. That's a good way to start the podcast. Has is calling out all the big CEOs to put their hands in their pocket.
Brilliant. Yeah, except the ones I work with. No, I'm just kidding.
No, look, and I like your opinion on it. I couldn't really put into words what I was feeling on it, but I found it was all a little bit harsh on him, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know,
I don't know semantics of it, to be honest with you. So that's why I didn't have an opinion on it.
So I want to have a conversation. Actually, it's been on my mind about what comes next, right?
Right.
And actually, rather than frame it in building from the base level we go to, I'm more interested in the dream at the other side of it, right?
Right.
So the framing for this part is hope. Right. So we're in it now. It's raining today. That's not very nice, and it's pretty miserable. But you're starting to see that things might, there's conversations about things easing up. You can see it in New Zealand that they're starting to talk about going back to work. So that we are going to be starting to return to something that isn't lockdown, right? So we don't know what it is, but it isn't lockdown. And I'm just curious, what are you hopeful for when we come back?
Do you know what? This is a question that's like come up quite a lot with a lot of sort of conversation, right? It's quite a topical thing at the moment. And I don't want to sit on the fence and say, I don't really know, but I guess it's what hope is the idea that there's something better, right? So if you're asking me what my hopes are for when we return, am I hoping that something about the world might be better? I would hope that. I would hope that there would be some improvement, but I don't think there will be very much improvement. I hope that we can learn, and I don't want to steal too much of my thunder on what I'm going to be bringing up later on the reasons to be cheerful, but I do think that we, in short, hopefully have come back to recognizing the value in one another rather than being overly materialistic and only seeing the value in what we can get for ourselves. So when you look at, we're all sort of seeing the value in the people that work within the NHS again. I've spent some, I wouldn't think twice about the binmen, for example, when they come here. But when we put the bin out yesterday, I was saying to Leah, my wife, have we got any beer laying about or something that we can put out as like a little bit of a gift? So I hope that we can, that people can spend a bit more time with that. But I don't know how much of that will transpire. I'm assuming, based on your question, that you have some kind of tangible idea of what you hope for.
No, and it's not about what you think might happen. I asked you what you are hopeful for.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, then in that case, I'm going to give an answer, which is I hope things go back to how they were. I was happy before lockdown, right? My life was going good. Like I enjoyed the space in which I was working in. So I hope things in that respect, I hope that we can go back to how we were and things don't change too much. But I guess that's from a personal perspective, right? So that's based on me and my world. I guess in a bigger picture, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I think at a personal level, we're all craving, the ability to take back what has been taken away, you know, in a way, like freedom of movement, seeing family, going out, going about our business,
Mm.
you know, that's how we're wired. So I fully appreciate that. And so elements of that I want to return to, but also there are lots of things I don't want to return to. You know, I don't want to return to, from a work perspective, being less present and having less time with the family. I know it's unrealistic to have the same amount of time that I've got now, but having uh, not just getting pulled into work so much that you stop kind of being as present as you have been now. But also, I think you know. I don't want us to go back to a society, like just talking about what you just said now. I don't want us to go back to a society where we don't appreciate the people that put themselves on the line.
Yeah.
That's like something. I also don't want to go back to a society where we just wantonly just jump on planes and like beat up the environment and and stuff like that. And what I'm hopeful for is just a better conversation around inequality, which might sound really deep, but actually I think it's really showing up. You know, you and I have talked about this before. We've talked about the fact that we've got a garden and other people haven't. We've talked about some people. I was just talking, to Erin as we were walking the other day, and you know, for some families, and obviously, I'm a trustee on a charity down in Southend. It's called Pack with Smiles, and it gives uniform parcels to kids from less kind of economically well-off families. And for a lot of kids, they would go to school and that would be their one healthy meal a day. You know this, you
Mm.
see it all the time. And uh now having to parents having to do print out stuff and buy pencils, and there's just like that little bit of money that I might have had for food is now having to go to other stuff, and it's not on. So there are some people, it's hard on everyone, but it's definitely harder for a lot of other people. And I'm hopeful that we are able to have a really proactive conversation about what we're going to do as a society to not, to try not to leave people behind. Structures just protect the people that are privileged, and
Yeah.
we're benefiting.
And
So you're benefiting as a male working, you've got family, you own your house, I'm the same, by the way, I've got all those stuff. So it's just, how can we kind of have a conversation to kind of, to raise the bar for everyone.
mm. And I hope, look, I hope the conversation does come. I'd like to be optimistic about it, right? And I don't like. I'm frightened of sounding like a bit downtrodden about it, but I'm worried about that side of stuff, because a lot of money has been borrowed in this time, and the line of we're still recovering financially from COVID-19 is one that I fear will be thrown out for many years to come. And I don't expect it to be thrown out necessarily to some of the massive corporations. I just don't. I expect it now. I think NHS workers, for example, uh, I think that conversation will be had. I think there will be money made available, and we will have more financial respect for people that work within the NHS. But I do think that somewhere it will be vulnerable people that will have funding and money taken away from them in order to keep the general national consensus happy. So if we come through this and everyone's like, NHS workers have to be paid more, and I certainly would not disagree with that statement, the government will then push to make sure that that happens, but it won't be at the expense of who it maybe should be at the expense of. Because through this, like people that struggle financially have had it harder. There's no doubt about that in this circumstance. But everybody has lost out. So everyone's going to be feeling hard done by. We spoke a little bit about Richard Branson, right? He's like epitomizes somebody at the opposite end of the spectrum. The man's lost out. He might be a multi-millionaire, but he's lost out, right?
Billionaire.
Billionaire, yeah, whatever.
Multi-billionaire.
Multi-billionaire.
No, I
yeah?
get what you're saying.
But he's lost out. Now, I'm not saying to you, well, you know, he's lost out as well, so he should benefit. But what I'm saying to you is many, many people like him will be in a place where they feel like, well, hang on a minute, I've worked hard for all of this and I've lost out, so I need rewarding as well. So I don't want to get too much into governmental structures and where the money for the government and all that kind of stuff comes from. But I worry that, for example, schools are not being spoken about much.
Yeah, no.
And I worry it's teachers, by the way, that will start, you know, sorry, young people, we don't have any funding. We're struggling from COVID-19. But everyone will be celebrating that the NHS staff have rightly got a pay rise, but that money will have come from somewhere. And then somebody, you know, young people don't vote. I don't know, people who struggle with addiction, all these kind of people, I think they're the ones that will begin to lose out, or I worry that they will be.
Okay. I mean, that's making an assumption that the only source of kind of turning things around is the government and where that comes from. And I appreciate it's a massive part of it. They run policy and that's where the money's going to come from. But I'm also hopeful that emergent conversations come outside of kind of whatever government can do, right? So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, other than our own one, obviously, on repeat. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and one that I came across that was absolutely brilliant was on TED. It was TED.com on their podcast, and they were interviewing a guy called Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is the CEO of the biggest kind of investment fund in the world called Bridgewater. And but he's also written a book called Principles, and he's very well known. And I think he's kind of moving beyond just, you know, doing what he does for a day job, but also he's now moving into like, what can we do for society? And he's a very interesting guy from my perspective. And so they were talking to him about like what's going to happen to the world after COVID-19, and he was saying, you know, this is what we're in happens cyclically. It has happened for 500,000 years. It happens every 70, 80 years. The last time that we sort of know of it was the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. And it is, you know, it is likely to be, he is predicting it to be a depression rather than a downturn and a recession, right? But he says there are 4 sort of steps. I can't remember them, so I'm not going to kind of try and do it justice, but I'll definitely recommend people go and listen to it. But, you know, you have like 4 stages that you go through. And for the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be pretty hard. You know, what happens is one of the stages is you borrow loads, which is what we're sort of doing. And then after that, like an emergent economy comes out, and then, you know, and then you sort of drive prosperity. And that's probably in about 4 years' time. So it is going to be tough, and there's no doubt about it. But the other thing that they asked him was, well, what businesses will be interested to know what businesses are going to kind of prosper, are going to be all right here? And this is what kind of gave me a little bit of hope. So you got your steady eddies. He referred to Campbell Soup, which is obviously big in America. For us, it'd be like Kellogg's or something like that. You know, that would be that would probably still be fine and be able to weather it. But then he said, you know, the ones that are invented, the companies, the ones that are invented. So I'm hopeful, and I'm with a massive dose of realism, I know, but I'm hopeful that businesses like my own that's trying to kind of figure out, you know, ways to innovate, may be able to help the conversation. So technology and science and intention and goodwill, and, you know, people that are wanting to found businesses on the right principles may be able to drive a conversation outside of kind of leaning on governments. And there are loads of things kind of emerging, loads of societal kind of you know, companies that are leaning into technology and community and content marketing that might, you know, sort to improve things. So if you just look at the way that we talked about Captain Tom Moore last week, you know, he wanted to raise 1,000, and then what was it, clocked up at 27 million. That is the power of community, the power of technology, the power of content marketing, and that's brilliant. So why can't we start to do more of that? That's kind of what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah, and I love that. It's almost, and actually, you know, when we get onto the reasons to be cheerful, I'm going to touch on some stuff that really kind of interlinks to that as well. So I'm going to switch it up completely and completely
All
change
right.
the focus of what we're doing, right?
Go on
Because
then.
actually, it's worth saying to the listeners, the way that we've been kind of experimenting with doing this podcast is what you've just done there, the stuff that you've brought to the table. I had no idea what we were going to talk about, right? And I'm going to do a similar thing for you. So I've come up with an idea that I want to put to you. So I've got 3 statements, right?
Mhm.
Well, actually, I've got two definite ones, 2 definite statements, and I'm going to throw the statements out at you, irrespective of whether I believe them or not. So they're hypotheses, right? And I want you to answer them, and I want you to say whether you agree or disagree, and then I want you to tell me why. Okay? So I'm just going to throw the first one out there, and it's going to take this conversation off in a completely different direction. Okay?
Okay. I'm down.
But it does feed into some of the stuff we said. Okay, so this is a statement that I may or may not agree with, but I'm going to put it out there for you to agree or disagree and tell me why. To give some context as well, one of the things that one might notice about me and you is your skin is brown, right? And my skin is white. Okay. Now we are probably, as close as it gets, we're best of friends, right? We're really, really good and close friends, right? So with that in mind, here's a statement that I may or may not agree with.
Okay.
I have no racial bias.
So you're saying, so the statement is, I, Josh Connolly, have no racial
Josh
bias.
Connolly,
Yeah.
have no racial bias.
And you want me to agree or disagree? I disagree.
Okay. And why do you disagree on that?
Well, firstly, you didn't qualify whether it was conscious or unconscious. So just, there are you can be consciously racially biased, like, and then the unconscious is kind of, you're less aware of it. It's because it's always been that way. It's inherent. You grew up that way. You don't even know you're being that way, right? So there's sort of that thing. But also, I think, look, you actually touched upon this in the previous podcast where, you were shaking hands with some people and then some person of color, you kind of fist bumped, and actually you thought you were just trying to be more friendly and more like on a level. But actually you kind of made a choice to do that versus shake a hand. And there was kind of no malice. Actually, it was the opposite of malice that was intended there. It was kind of show connectivity. So that's racial bias. I think also, my assumption is that there is stuff that's been built up over time in the media, even though you've done loads of work, even though you are the human being and the wonderful man that you are now. There's just some stuff that is really hardwired in the way that you're thinking. So I imagine if you walked past a certain group, and I'm not going to call an ethnic group or anything, but it may trigger different feelings than if you were walking past a different group, right? Or a mixed group of males and females versus, a particular group. So I think, I'm afraid, you have racial bias, and so do I.
Yeah. Yeah. And I trusted that was the answer you'd give. And so just to kind of elaborate on it, I would give the same answer in that I have to be aware that I have racial bias. And like a lot of my internal journey, it has to be something that I become conscious on working on. Yeah. And this is like some of the really helpful and useful conversations I get to have with you, right? As somebody who has a different skin color to me, right? Is to be able to have these open conversations, because if I really want to challenge that bias, that bias that will be there. And for me, I would hope that it's unconscious bias, right? But it's stuff that I can pick up and start to try and pull apart, question where it comes from, question why my belief is there, right? And so I do recognize it in me, right? I think a lot of the big problems that we have when we talk about race within the country is, particularly white people, we don't want to challenge ourselves to that, and we will only see, because as a white person growing up in the country that I've grown up in, I have never experienced racism, right? Or I haven't experienced anybody. I don't know what it's like to have somebody else picked over me because of the color of their skin, right? I don't know. I've never experienced that. And so if I'm not willing to question and understand where that comes from, what you'll often see white people do is say, I don't see any racist language here. You're making it racist because you're making it about color. And I think a lot of white people struggle with that. They struggle with that conversation. And they want to see clear evidence that there's been some kind of racism. Otherwise, it's not racist. Yeah. And I grew up in groups of people when I was a young man, for example, who would have listened to the answer that you just gave and been like, you've got such a chip on your shoulder, mate. Why are you going on about it, right? Unconscious and all that. Let it go. Why are you making an issue of it? That's what I once would have thought, right? But having learned and been willing to challenge myself, consistently challenge myself, I've changed my opinion on it quite drastically.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is this something I really learned. I went on this like life-changing program called Design for Inclusion by the brilliant organization called Fearless Futures, who are, I think, clear leaders in what they do, and kind of helping organizations and individuals to really understand kind of structures and privilege and kind of start to build kind of new things. I think it's, I don't say life-changing lightly, because there's only 2 courses that were completely life-changing for me. One was my coaching course, which has enabled me to do this, and that's the other one, run by the brilliant Hannah. And but one thing that loads of things stuck out, but one of the things was the view of the exception rather than the norm. Right. So we had a few, a couple of guys in there, white middle class males, and originally one of them grandfather came from a very poor background, worked really hard, and kind of made his way and kind of had some success. And he was like, well, if he can do it, then anyone can. But that was an exception rather than the norm around poverty, right? And but then it's like, of course, there are success stories in every in kind of every area that you look at, but you can't look at the exceptions and say, well, that can be true of everyone, because once those structures and those things are in place, it's just you're always perpetually moving ahead of whatever that structure is to keep that structure in place, right? And so these things they just become unconscious, and it's difficult because it's a hard topic. People don't want to talk about it, and I know you're sort of calling out white people, and it's we're in England, and there's so much there's a lot of truth to that, but it exists everywhere. These
everywhere,
sort of the kind of the ones in quote unquote power, in the position of power, will always kind of hold that view. And that might be between religions, it might be Hindus and Muslims, it might be anti-Semitism, there's always take the Labour Party. There's like loads of people that have said, oh well, it's not really a problem, they're just trying to kind of make it to get rid of Corbyn. But that's just another, it's kind of whitewashing the topic.
Yeah. And you'll see, by the way, one of the really bad things that will come out of this pandemic is that anti-Semitism towards China, right? And you're already seeing it, like, in people that start to now have bias towards Chinese people, right? And there's a lot of that kind of
racism,
it's racism, that's coming out. And I'm less calling white people out and more challenging white people, because I think one of the biggest problems that we have, right, if we want to really change this and challenge it, right, and I'm quite passionate about this, we got to stop just expecting the victims of this to be the ones that stand up and have the conversation about it. You never see white people, or not never, you rarely see white people challenging this and saying this is wrong, we need to change, it's us. You look at when it was in football, right? All the conversations were about white people empowering black people or BAME people to walk off, right? So it was like the best we could do as white people were to say, well, if you think it's that bad, I'll stand by you if you walk off, right? Which is me going, well, you know, it's bad. If you don't like it, it's up to you. Yeah, I'll empower you because I'm the one in power. Yeah. Whereas I think it should have been, no, we're going to walk off. I, as a white man, I'm going to walk off because I'm going to say it's not right for the people that I care about, which is surely. Or do I then fall into that trap myself of them being like, I'm the white man of power that's going to be, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think the important thing is to, in this conversation, is not to vilify, and I know you're not doing that, but you're not to vilify any particular individual or make it difficult to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So if there are things you don't know, or you're worried about, you know, what language to use, then you retreat. You don't want to do this, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things is, even like, let's say when you have a team captain who is white, who wants to support their teammate who's black. And so they were like, yeah, I'm going to, you know, join you. If you want to do that, I'll do that. You know, they're trying to like show solidarity. But the key difference is, you know, they walk off the field and that's it. In a way, that's it. You know, that's it. They'll go home, they'll do their thing, they'll come back, they'll train, they'll go back on the field, you know, whereas it isn't just a one-off experience. You live with it for life. And like, it's just that no one really, you know, you just don't talk about it. It's just there. And then it's just those moments that kind of get caught in the media. But that's just, you know, that's just a snapshot of what happens on a daily basis for everyone. And so it's really not only understanding it, because I think there is a desire to be more empathetic, more compassionate, more understanding, to have more solidarity, but there's also okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm really determined to do something about it, and I'm consistently determined to do something. I'm going to use my power and my privilege and my persuasion skills to alter the conversation long-term and systemically. That's the only way.
Because that's the difference from you've got like the kind of outlandish, barbaric thugs at football that are like clearly using racist language and racial gestures, right? That's the stuff that hits the media. Saw a female comedian, and I can't remember her name, but she's a black lady, and she was talking about how she was saying that mindless racism. She was like, that doesn't bother me. She was like, that's mindless idiots, right? I can wash that to one side. She was like, the real racism that's going on in our country today that bothers me. She was like, me and my friend, and her friend was a black lady as well. She said we were getting the train from somewhere for work. She was like, I had a set. So we were first class in this train. We were bought first class train tickets. And she said, we walked into the first class section, and, you know, the doors open, and somebody was sat, a white guy sat there and said, as they walked in, oh, sorry, this is first class. Yeah. And she said, that's the kind of racism, because he wouldn't have even known. And if they had said, why are you being racist? He'd have been like, what? Why have you got a chip on your shoulder? Why have you made this about race? Yeah. And I feel like that's the kind of racism that is systematically going on in our country everywhere, all the time, by good, well-meaning people quite often, including myself, you know. And I've had wake-up calls to my own bias and how it plays out in my life, even as somebody who's actively trying not to be like that. Yeah. So that's, you know, I always think that that gray area, that it's not a gray area, but that difficult part of the conversation is the bit that gets missed from white people of privilege. Because you see the guy, you know, the guy on Question Time, what's your man's name, who said, the lady said to him, you're Fox, a white man of privilege.
Something Fox, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, you're racist for saying that to me. And he did the like rolled his eyes, didn't he?
Yeah, but that was very deliberate, you know, like that was deliberate, kind of. He's a nothing actor, and he was trying to get some notoriety, and it worked for a second, and then it's gone again.
You reckon that's what that was?
Yeah.
Is that not in some ways worse?
Maybe, but like, you know, it's like you know, Katie Hopkins was the same, you know, like he's just trying to jump on something. He wants to be a flag bearer for, you know, he might have some right-wing views, I'm sure, but, you know, the fact that we're even talking about him just brings him back up, and that's just not what we want to do. But, you know, I think that isn't the same as what you're saying. You know, I think it's the sort of, oh, this is first class, you know, so you shouldn't be here. You know, that is just inherent wired. That is kind of ingrained. It's kind of even probably not taught in an explicit way. It's like, it's
No,
just,
no, that's the thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess what can, so if, you know, thinking about trying to change a system that is, you know, decades, if not centuries old, right? You look at that and you go, well, you can't do anything about it, right? So you go, well, that's too big, so I'm not going to take it on. And there's a brilliant quote that I got from that, and I can't remember who it was, who said it originally, but the quote was, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced.
Right. Yeah.
Which is like incredible, right? For just a metaphor for life. So what do you think just everyday Joes like you and me could do to start to kind of just move it an inch forward?
Well, start to have the courage to have these kind of conversations, because I do a lot of stuff where people say they thank you for your vulnerability and all stuff like that, but I don't never feel as exposed and vulnerable as I do when I'm talking openly on a platform like this about this stuff. So we need to be, I think we need to be better at having these kind of conversations, probably from all sides to some degree. I got a guy I know, his name's Ivan, who I met him on like the speaker circuit, and he was ex-EDL, English Defence League, right? And he was like very close to Tommy Robinson and stuff like that, right? And then what happened was he was organizing one of the events, and he went and met a Muslim guy, and the Muslim guy was very loving and let him in his house, and they had this conversation. And what he found is that this Muslim guy had exactly the same fears and worries as him. And he was like, and he showed him love. And now Ivan goes around schools and does all this work, tackling extremism and allowing the difficult conversations. And he said the biggest weapon that far right stuff that he got caught up in had was the silence of ordinary people with ordinary fears. And so it was the open conversation with compassion, where this guy looked beyond Ivan's current, at the time, prejudice and all of that stuff, and had enough compassion and love for him anyway to listen to his fears and worries. Once he listened to them properly, they were able to have a conversation. Ivan had to do the same to the guy, and he listened to the guy's problems, and all of a sudden they realized they had more common ground than differences. And now, you know, Ivan does loads of work. They come together and they do this amazing work. That's born out of listening to the difficult conversation and having the difficult conversations. So I guess that would be an amazing starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But I do think there needs to be more done from white people's side of it. And I worry, I don't know, I feel scared when I say that myself. I don't know why I feel scared.
No, look, that's true for sure. And, you know, but I think the point you made before that was really powerful, you know, to be able to have the conversation, to kind of be able to articulate the kind of the ordinary fears or the worries. I think also to, you know, to be able to be ignorant for a while, right? As in, like, to lay your ignorance around what language to use, what perceptions you've built up, those sorts of things, to be able to have the conversation and not get like beaten up at the beginning. And I said for a while, right? Because actually you can kind of bring some level of ignorance, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, it's just as in the not knowing, to the conversation, but then have an appetite to kind of to address it, to shift those opinions. That's really important. And it's important not to hold that ignorance. Yeah, I think that's an important step forward, you know.
And I'm glad we're able to have these conversations. It's one of the reasons I think we've created this platform, right? So does that bring us on nicely then? Does that bring us towards our reasons after that deep conversation, difficult conversation? Have we arrived at our reasons to be cheerful?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it's a good topic, and I think we should stay close to it. But
Yeah. I think
reasons
it will
to be
be a thread
cheerful.
that runs through a lot of what we do, right? Because I think it's one of the things that we talk a lot about.
Mm.
But I mean, off of the podcast,
Mm.
as friends, whenever these things rear their head in the media,
Mm.
we're always having conversations about it, aren't we? I send you
Yeah.
something on WhatsApp and then we'll get on
We'll get on one.
soapboxes.
We'll get on one. Reasons to be cheerful.
Who's going first?
I am.
All right, good.
Because I know you wanted to. Because
Yeah,
you've been thinking about it. No, so reasons to be cheerful. Old friendships.
Yeah.
So you sort of touched upon it, like right at the beginning of the podcast. Just connecting with people without a really fixed agenda. This is sort of something different for me. This is this sort of lockdown period. I've connected with people in a really deep way, old friends that had become a little bit like text buddies or Facebook buddies.
Ooh, friend.
Yeah. What was that?
Have you ooh, Facebook friend? Did you not used to watch the I'm not going to be able to remember what it's called now.
No,
you don't watch that?
if you can't remember it, then it just sounds a bit weird.
The In-Betweeners.
Yeah. Yeah. Not enough to know a quote like.
All right. That's just
probably
set about
your
ruining your
sort of
flow.
thing.
Sorry. Get back to you.
No. So old friendships, really creating deep connections, having laughs, rekindling like old connections has just been like wonderful. Got a mate, John, in Australia. We've stayed in touch. We hung about late 90s, early 2000s when he was traveling. He was in London. Had such a laugh, and then we've just sort of stayed close. But he lives in Sydney, and but we've really, really connected. Have a laugh. We're going to find a way that we can, like, I think I'm going to start at 12, and he's going to be at 9:30 in the evening, and we're just going to have proper social, and and have a laugh, and and so it's been really good connecting with him, and I'm jumping on with some buddies that this evening. So yeah, my reasons to be cheerful is rekindling old friendships.
Rekindle it. I like that one. And I like John. I've met John on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Great hair.
Yeah.
Love a man with good hair. So my reasons to be cheerful. Actually, we've spoke a little bit about it in some ways as well. So the flip side of what I'm about to say is, well, actually, I'll tell you what it is. I wanted to talk about have you seen the 2.6 challenge that's been going on? So it should have been the London Marathon, I think, this weekend, just gone, or the following weekend.
Okay.
So what a lot of people have done is broke down 26 miles to 2.6, and they're doing lots of different things for charity, right? And so I've seen lots of these people have been sort of running 2.6 miles a day for 10 days, or one guy did a marathon in his living room, just going around the outside of his living room and stuff like that. And I do hope, that opens the door to the wider thing of charity. And I don't just mean charities, but I mean charity from us as people, that willingness to understand that if we have a little bit more privilege of some kind, whether it's free time, free money, free food, whatever it may be, that we're able to do a bit more sharing of that, and we realize the value in giving. There is the slight flip side that we explored earlier, where it could be very easy to say that charity is a failing of government. So if you need a charity, it's because there's a failing of government. But actually, I think it goes a lot further than that. And I do think that the giving, the ability to be able to give, is something that's quite incredible, especially when it seems to have been born out of a time when we've all had to withdraw and retract. We've been able to find this desire to give and to help people again. Captain Tom Moore was a great example, like you said earlier, of how much money he raised. But not just him, even the people that maybe haven't been able to create a platform or hasn't taken off in the ways that he did, but people are thinking, what can I do? What can I do as a person to give back to some of the people within our community? And I hope that lasts. And I do hope. So maybe I should have thought of this when you asked me the question earlier. But I do hope that's something that survives. And I think it's a really good reason to be cheerful when you see it happening in the way that it does and has.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's a wonderful kind of way to end today's podcast. You know, just really, you know, appreciating that even in times of kind of individual fear and worry, that people are kind of, you know, digging in, thinking about something bigger. That's why I think I wanted to point to what we're hopeful for.
Yeah.
So I hope that people won't forget.
So we've gone full circle on today's episode, back to what there is to be hopeful for. It's been a good conversation. It's gone
Really
in all
enjoyed it.
different directions and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So we'll be back again next week.